I have loved Anne Marie Santos almost all my life. I have loved her since I knew what love was. In middle school, we were best friends. In high school, we were boyfriend and girlfriend. In college, we were lovers, and when we graduated, we got married. I knew I wanted to marry Anna Marie from the very first time we kissed. My mom and dad tried to get me to date other girls. They were very concerned that Anne Marie and I were too close at such a young age. I understood their point of view, but it didn't matter to me. I never felt I had to hold back or give up anything. To be with Anne Marie, I think if I had, we would have just drifted apart. I chose the college I wanted to attend purely on academic criteria, and it just so happened to have the best opportunities for Anne Marie as well. We had many unrelated friends and interests. We spent a lot of time apart, but the best time we spent together. She was my best friend and I married her. Anne Marie was my complete opposite in many ways. She was outgoing and I was reserved. She was short, 5 feet 5 inches on her best day. I was tall, 6 feet 4 inches when my growth stopped. She was the emotional one and I was the calm one. She had a large family and I was an only child. She was an athlete and I was always trim and athletic, but my interests were more academic. She was a devout Catholic. I believed in God, but was skeptical of religion. I was pretty enough. She was very, very good looking. I wasn't a movie star and she wasn't a model, but we were well suited for each other. I can't say exactly what caused our mutual attraction, I can only say that it was genuine. When we were kids, she would gently tease me and I would pretend to know how a gentleman should behave. I would watch her play and she would come to my debates. I was always proud of her no matter what she did, and her smile always let me know she felt the same way. We never made plans, but we always ended up together in the end. I never made her choose me, and she never asked me to change a single character trait, but we always ended up putting each other first. And we could talk to each other about anything, about dreams, fears, desires. We always shared everything. That's why it was so shocking, and that's why it hurt so much. I wasn't sure I believed in soulmates, but if I did, she would have been mine. We were caring and attentive. It was more than just lust. When I asked her father for permission to marry his youngest daughter, he gave me a first-class interrogation. He questioned everything about our relationship. I admit, I panicked at first. I was confused about my answers, but then I saw Anne Marie through the window watching our conversation on the porch. At that moment, I realized I had to answer honestly and decisively. If I wanted her hand, I would have to earn it. I explained to him that although she had touched my heart, I had chosen to love her. I had made that choice. I convinced him that I knew what that meant, surely for the better, even for the worse, no matter what. Whatever was worse. 3 short years later, the worst came, and I made my decision. I still loved her, and I still wanted her to be happy, even if I wasn't happy. So I sat alone, trying to keep my emotions under control. She knew me well enough to know what my reaction would be. I'm sure she took that into consideration. Even when in a state of emotional frenzy, she always knew how I would react. In this case, it would be different. In the past, my predictability has been a source of strength for her. Now it would release it. But how I would treat her was up to me. She got home late from work. Again. Unfortunately, over the past 4 months, this has become the norm in our house. It was this and the change in her behavior that gave me my first clue. The fact that she no longer smiled at the sight of me hurt me far more than finding out the details. To see with your own eyes that the person you love no longer loves you is devastating. She walked quietly into the dining room. I was immersed in my own thoughts, but still noticed her appearance. "Hi, Annie." "Hey, Gavin, are you okay?" "No, not really. Please sit down for a minute so I can explain to you why." I rehearsed my speech and hoped I wouldn't have to deviate too much from the script. I wasn't sure I could make the right decision if forced to, and I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to be brave and honorable in the face of the most difficult challenge I had ever faced. To let go of Anne Marie. "Annie, I love you with all my heart. I always have, and I'm sure I always will. I don't want to argue with you. I don't want to yell at you. I don't want to call you names or throw accusations at you. I want us to sit here and decide together what we need to do, okay?" "Of course, Gavin. What are you talking about?" Her eyes betrayed her attempt to hide her anxiety, however slight. Annie, more than anything, I want you to be happy. I don't know why. That thought hasn't left me since the first time we kissed. And even though it pains me to say it, I know you're not happy with me. Unshed tears stood in her eyes. Strangely, I was comforted by the fact that by dumping me, she was at least a little upset. I'm really not interested in discussing all the details. I'm afraid that if I know too much, it will hurt me and keep me from moving forward. I don't want you to think I'm a coward. But if we could just agree that I know for a fact that you're not happy with me, I'd appreciate it. You know what I'm talking about, don't you, Annie? She barely audibly whispered back, "Yes, Gavin. I know what you're talking about." Thank you, Annie. The fact that you don't deny it helps me believe I'm making the right choice. Annie, I want a divorce. Miguel Santos possessed an inner strength that I had always admired. He and his wife Maria were raising 4 sons and 4 daughters in a small 3-bedroom house in a not-so-great neighborhood. He was 5 feet 9 inches tall, a physique born on the streets and hardened by manual labor, with matching tattoos and scars. I'm sure he was one of the strongest men I've ever met. That too is impressive. But it was the loyalty and devotion with which he treated his wife and raised his family that earned my respect. So I saw fit to explain my decision to him and warn him. We were sitting on his back porch chatting over a few beers when he finally got me to tell my story. Mijo, are you going to tell me about why you came here? Yeah, I wish I could, but it's harder than I thought. I hoped he would stay calm long enough for me to tell the whole story. Sir, I have loved no one but your daughter since I first saw her. I promised you on this very porch that I would always put her needs before my own. I have come here today to tell you that I believe that is exactly what I am doing, even though I am leaving Anne-Marie. What followed was about what I expected. He was angry with me. Of course, it wasn't without a few bilingual phrases. He demanded an explanation. I couldn't give one. Sir, all I can say is that I love your daughter and that some things will remain a secret between me and her unless she sees fit to discuss them with you. It pains me to sit before you and admit that my marriage to your daughter has failed. But I believe it is for the best. I only ask that you respect that I have come to tell you this in private because I believe you deserve to hear it from me. After a while, he calmed down enough to let me give some details. When I left, he was embarrassed and upset, but let me leave without further ado. Anne-Marie never cried. She was on the verge of tears for a few minutes, but they never came. She didn't argue with me or attack my masculinity. I was glad for that. But I silently hoped she would beg me to stop and change my mind. But she never did. I felt calmer knowing that my decision to leave without a fight was the right one. The only time she flinched was when I mentioned my conversation with her father. I spoke to your father this afternoon. I explained to him what I'm about to explain to you. I just hope that out of respect for our time together, we can part without a lengthy process. I don't want to deal with the possibility of financial ruin along with everything else. I plan to leave as soon as our divorce is finalized. I have prepared the paperwork. There are several options for dividing our limited assets. The most important one is your decision regarding our home. Please go over them with whomever you wish and let me know by the end of next week. Okay, Gavin, I'll review them. I can already hear the groans. Why don't I sick the SWAT team on my wife and her lover using my super secret ninja and spy skills? For one thing, I didn't have those skills. The last time I was involved in a fight was my sophomore year of high school, when a senior tried unsuccessfully to befriend Anna-Marie. I was furious when I found her crying in the school parking lot. It was pure luck that I didn't catch up with the guy on school grounds. I would have been expelled for sure. My dad grounded me for a month. I considered myself lucky when his parents decided not to press charges against me. Years later, I learned that I had Miguel Santos to thank for that. He convinced the boy's father that keeping the case quiet was the best choice for all involved. The second factor that influenced my decision was my own mental health. For weeks now, I had been a wreck. I was having trouble sleeping, and at work I was one more mistake away from being fired, and most importantly, I had no one to turn to. My mother died of breast cancer in her last year of college just before graduation. My father became addicted to the bottle to cope with his grief and was never the same again. 6 months after her death, he moved to Florida, and I didn't hear from him for almost 4 years. I needed a fresh start and to get away from my hometown. To do that, I needed money. What little I had belonged to Anne Marie, so I needed her to agree with my decision to divorce and start over. I was only 25 years old and I had a plan. If luck turned my way, I could survive with my sanity intact. Revenge was the furthest thing from my mind. 2 weeks after my conversation with Anne Marie, we were sitting in our attorney's office. Anne Marie had decided to give up the house and it was up for sale. We would split the checking and savings accounts. My meager retirement account would be mine. She would keep our new car and the payments on it. I would keep my 10-year-old truck. And that's it. Signed, sealed, and delivered, except for the 90-day waiting period. The next thing I did was the one act I regretted during the divorce. I lied to Anna Marie. "Where are you going to live, Gavin?" "I've rented a small apartment near the office. I'm going to live there until I decide what to do next." "Good. Then I guess I'll see you when the house is sold." "At the closing on leased, right?" "Sure. See you soon, Annie." Our attorney had my power of attorney for the closing. My truck was fueled and stocked with clothes and a laptop. My wedding ring lay on the kitchen table of what had once been our home on top of my last message to Anne Marie. The note read, "Goodbye, I will always love you. Be happy." On my way out of town, I stopped to say goodbye to Miguel Santos. He had meant so much more to me over the years than the average father-in-law. "Mijo, you and Anna Marie should be together. Anyone can see that. You both don't want to talk about what happened. Can there be forgiveness? Do you remember your vows to God and family? This is too much and too fast. Yes, too fast. Sir, I have found it in my heart to forgive. I love your daughter and want only the best for her. Now I need to find peace." Maria Santos hugged me at the door, letting me know she understood more than she was saying. When she finally let me go, she put her hand on my cheek, closed her eyes, and stood silent for a while. When she opened them again, she spoke in a voice that only I could hear. "God bless you, mijo. I will miss you." I had to leave before I broke down. When your spouse is clearly unhappy with you, it's good to know the reason why. I had no idea. Little things came up from time to time, putting the toilet seat down, picking up his socks, loading his dishes into the washer. But in the past few months, we'd never once fought over nothing. I thought maybe she was stressed out at work. They were clearly working longer hours. I asked her about it. She said she had to work harder, but she would be fine. Then I did the one thing I knew would not get me into more trouble. I started doing more around the house than I should have. I started cooking dinners more often and doing the dishes right afterward. I washed and folded towels and sheets. I dusted the furniture and washed the windows. I tried to do anything she might notice, anything that might melt her icy attitude toward me. After a few weeks, I broke down and took on my least favorite job, cleaning the bathroom. If I hadn't done that, it would probably have been quite some time before I found out. I know I would never have thrown the trash out of the bathroom. I know I wouldn't have seen the box with the pregnancy test. This piqued my curiosity and I started going through the trash until I found a positive test. This led me to the medicine cabinet and its full dispensers of birth control pills. This led me to reflection and a horrible conclusion. We hadn't had sex in at least 7 weeks. For almost 2 months, we made excuses that we weren't feeling well, too tired, too stressed. It was the longest we'd ever been away, but I hadn't thought about the possible consequences. I had to be wrong, but I knew I wasn't. Another man had impregnated my wife, but who? The answer to that question didn't take long to answer. I called Anne Marie and prepared to ask the agonizing question. Her direct number was forwarded to the front desk. I asked to be connected to Anne Marie, but was informed that Miss O'Connor had already left. I decided not to leave a message. Her car was still parked in the parking lot when I pulled up to her office about 20 minutes later. My faint hope that she had been in an accident and someone was frantically trying to contact me had crumbled. 30 minutes later, all my questions were answered. Her boss, Michael James, stopped his car right next to Anna Marie's automobile. She got out of the passenger door and walked over to him. I saw her smile as they finished kissing, openly, carefree. My smile, freely given to another, that was all I needed to know. I was a few minutes ahead of her. I had no trouble hiding my feelings from her that night. She barely glanced in my direction. It took me a little over 2 hours to realize that my marriage was over, and why. Las Vegas was 20 hours away. I made it in 4 days. The first day I drove through Nebraska and Colorado. I took my time driving through the mountains of Colorado and Utah because I liked the peace and quiet I found crossing the Great Watershed, and because I wasn't sure my truck could handle the terrain. At first I was worried about the engine, but by the end of the trip I was more concerned about the brakes. At the end of the fourth day, I laid down on an uncomfortable mattress in the hotel next to the strip. For the next 18 hours I slept. It didn't take long to register, buy books, and fill out housing applications. Less than a week before, I was a 25-year-old recently divorced student with an adulterous ex-wife and no family. Now, I was a first-year law student living in a one-room dorm with a shared kitchen and bathroom. I was on my way to a new life. I wish I could tell you about my new exploits and acquaintances after returning to college life. But nothing could be further from the truth. I had no dating experience. It was always just Gavin and Anne-Marie. I had no idea where to even begin. I can tell you that during law school, I never had a single date. I didn't even have any close friends. If any woman even hinted that she was interested in me, I missed those signals. Instead, I used school as an escape and put all my energy into studying. I spent the next 4 years earning my Juris Doctor and Master of Business Administration degrees. It wasn't such a crazy idea. I was preparing myself to have a 4.0 grade point average. Anne-Marie and I discussed the possibility of going back to school when we were in a stronger financial position. When I decided I needed to move on with my life, the first thing I did was take the LSAT exam and fill out the applications. Why Las Vegas? They were the first to accept me with a full scholarship and grant package. I didn't know anything else about the school or the city except that they had the program I wanted and they were far away from my hometown. About once a month, I would send Mr. and Mrs. Santos a letter telling them about my studies and life in graduate school. This was a habit I picked up from my parents when I was a student. Maybe it was routine, or maybe I hoped that someone in the world cared about what I was doing. 13 weeks after the start of my first semester, I had a package waiting for me. I now knew the exact dollar amount. My love and heart was worth $7,642.18, after fees and expenses, of course. This was probably the third most depressing day of my life. Periodically, every few weeks or so, I would get an email response from Miguel or Maria Santos. I never let them know where I really was, and they never asked. They would give news about one of their other 7 children, but never about Anna Marie. It allowed me to imagine that I had a family that missed me. I don't know if it helped or not, but it made me feel less alone, so I kept in touch with them. For the first 6 or 7 months, there was always some hints, but never anything explicit. Forgiveness, reconciliation, fatherhood, responsibility. They never talked about it explicitly, but never dropped a strategic, encouraging anecdote. And suddenly, the reminders and hints stopped. I never doubted that Anne-Marie would keep the baby, but I wondered if she would tell her parents the truth before the baby was born and could no longer be hidden. I also wondered whether Michael James would divorce his wife, whether he would abandon his 3 children, and whether he would act honorably for Anne-Marie. I could only wonder because I didn't have the courage to make inquiries. But I knew that the likelihood that a child born to a black man would look like me or inherit my light brown hair, fair complexion, or green eyes was slim. I felt a little cowardly when I sent flowers, balloons, and a gift basket to the James home to congratulate Mr. James and Anne-Marie on the birth of their baby. I sent a duplicate copy of Anne-Marie's congratulations to her office addressed to the president of the company. I had promised myself that I would not stoop to deliberately trying to hurt anyone, even Michael James, but the pain was still too much. I needed to do something about it. I didn't start any malicious rumors, I just congratulated him. In fact, I was genuinely happy for Anne-Marie. She always talked about her love for children. We talked about having a big family, many children, and hopefully grandchildren. She was striving for her dream, and I was happy for her. But I didn't lose sight of the fact that her happiness came at the cost of my pain. And without knowing what actually happened after receiving my gifts, I could envision a disastrous outcome for Michael James, however unlikely it might actually be. Thankfully, that simple, cowardly act allowed me to legitimately close that chapter of my life. I was still hurting, really hurting. But it was over, and nothing could be changed. It didn't help my social life. I didn't have one and wouldn't have one for a few. Well, many years. I met my first real friend after my divorce at work, and he was 20 years older than me. The small law firm I joined specialized in real estate transactions. The starting salary was above my expectations, but not prohibitive. I was good with contracts, always good with numbers, and later it turned out I was good with people. Gavin, people need to be able to look you in the eye and know that you can solve their problems. They hand you the keys to their dreams and trust that you won't screw it up. You have a gift, and I'm going to show you how to use it. David Rothschild was the senior partner assigned to review my work. He actually did more than that. He became my mentor, and life coach. Rothschild was a living legend in the legal community. He handled multi-million-dollar real estate transactions and was a top-notch negotiator. He was loved and, more importantly, respected by state and local politicians, the business community, and the gaming industry. Everything he undertook ended in success. He simply did not allow failure. Fortunately for me, he decided that I would be his next project. I will never forget his first evaluation of my work, just 90 days after starting my legal career. Gavin, as an attorney, you are dedicated, diligent, and meticulous. You're creative and very knowledgeable about the law. You're great at your job. I allowed myself a brief smile in response to the compliment. Thank you, Mr. Rothschild. As a human being, you're completely inept at your job. Are you 30 or 90? What the hell is going on with you? Don't bother telling me now, we're going for a walk. And so I found myself sitting across from David Rothschild, real estate wizard, king of Las Vegas, for what became our weekly review of The Gavin Project. By the end of our first session, I realized why he was so good at what he does. He asked me a few questions and then let me do the talking. Every now and then, he would ask clarifying questions, tell some story or anecdote, and then listen to me again. I told him everything. I told him about my life since childhood, about my parents, about law school, and most importantly, about Anne-Marie. I told him things I had never told anyone else, and I felt completely safe. He ended our conversation the way only he knew how. Well, we have a lot to work on. Fortunately, we have a lot to work on. Now let's get back to the office. I'm not paying you to mess around all day. I had no idea of his motives because we had never discussed them. At first, I didn't really understand what he was trying to accomplish, but after 3 years, the results became obvious. He was often so elusive that I didn't even realize what he was doing until it was done. He would plant the seed and I would find the flower. He would comment on pictures, articles, movies, TV shows, or books. Something would click in my brain and I would add to my closet, go to the gym, learn to cook, make better investments, buy my own real estate. Without his help, I would have lived a very nice middle-class life. But with his help, I became a confident, successful, young, and promising business tycoon. I made the right choices, met the right people, and got involved in the right deals. I always didn't know how to thank him, but he didn't want any credit. Even though his dad showed him how to hold a putter, Tiger is the one who makes the shots and wins the tournaments, Gavin. The only thanks I need, or will ever need, is to watch you succeed. I worked for Rothschild for almost 5 years when he stopped pushing me to succeed in business and started working on my personal life and, more importantly, my soul. He gave away the first bombshell one day, casually stopping by my office and sitting down in one of the guest chairs. He said, "Gavin, what are you getting your parents for their anniversary?" I was puzzled by this question. He had to remember that my mother had died years ago. I was sure he knew that my father had died of liver failure the previous year. He was the one who had approved my taking time off to go to Florida for the funeral. When I looked at him, he took great pleasure in my confusion. Come on, Gavin. Next month, Miguel and Maria Santos will have been married for 50 years. Surely you've already thought of a suitable gift. Only a jackass wouldn't celebrate an event of this magnitude. Damn ungrateful children. With those words, he triumphantly departed. He was right. The Santos were my de facto parents. I sent them messages at least once a month. In my second year of law school, I started calling them on their birthdays. I even occasionally sent them gifts or cards on holidays, including flowers for Mother's Day. After about a year, I stopped hiding my whereabouts and could always count on a nice birthday card and a package from Mary for Christmas. 50 years of marriage is a lifetime achievement that deserves the very best. That's exactly what I got them. First-class airfare, a stay at a five-star spa and hotel, a limo, a table at the finest restaurants in Las Vegas, and VIP tickets to the hottest shows on the Strip. All expenses paid. I sent it to them at night with congratulations. In honor of a shining example of true loyalty, happy anniversary. The contents will be used at your discretion. Love, Gavin. I had no expectations of my gift and was surprised when I received a phone call at noon the next day. Gavin O'Connor. Oh, mijo, what a wonderful surprise, but this is too much. Mrs. Santos, I'm very pleased to hear you say that. But you and your husband deserve this gift, and I was honored to give it to you. Oh, Gavin, you've always been a wonderful boy. Un momento, Miguel wants to talk. Gavin? Yes, sir? Gavin, this is too much. I can't put you in a difficult position. I can't even imagine what it would cost. It's too much. He went on and on. I didn't understand how he managed not to get out of breath. Senor Santos? Miguel? Papa? Yes, Gavin. My gift does not even repay you for all the kindness you have shown me over the years. It gives me great joy to be able to give it to you. Please accept it in the spirit in which it was intended. After a short pause, he pronounced, Si, mijo. We accept. Wonderful. Happy anniversary. After that, the conversation took a turn any travel agent would be proud of. I explained to the best of my ability everything I thought they should enjoy about the trip. I hung up the phone after many words of gratitude and love, and I felt better, much better. I think it was the first non-selfish act I've done in almost a decade. I was just reflecting on that fact when I noticed Rothschild and his huge grin darkening my doorway. Damn ungrateful kids! Shut up, old man! The Santos' vacation didn't go at all the way I expected. I assumed they'd want to make the most of my gift. Sightseeing, eating at great restaurants, resting and relaxing at the hotel and spa. They did, but they always dragged me along for the ride. But the most important thing they wanted to do was spend time with me, and from the minute they checked into the resort. Judging by the arrival time, the drive time to the hotel, and the few minutes to check in, they hadn't been in the room more than 5 minutes when my phone rang. Gavin O'Connor. Mijo, when are you coming to see us? Hello, Mrs. Santos. How was the flight? Good, good. Miguel said we need to rest for a few minutes and then we'll be ready to leave. When will you be arriving at our place? Well, I think I can be there in about an hour. Oh, mijo, great. I'll see you then. To be honest, I hadn't planned on spending time with the Santos during their trip. They had enough to keep themselves busy. I had work piled up on my desk and was contemplating how to rearrange my schedule when Rothschild walked into my office with 2 paralegals. Gavin, I took the liberty of assigning you some time off. I think you need a break. Now get out of here and don't come back for a week or you'll be fired. The paralegals boxed up all my work and quickly left, leaving my desk empty. Gavin, spend some time with your parents and I'll take care of everything else. That's what I did. However, I broke one rule. Santos insisted on visiting my office. Rothschild didn't usually joke about a man's employment status, but when we entered the office, he seemed to be expecting us. He personally gave the Santos a tour of the office, introducing them all as my parents. Coffee and snacks awaited us in the conference room, where he spent almost an hour telling the Santos about my work, praising my accomplishments, and treating them like royalty. I will say that I was very pleased to see Santos glowing with pride when he talked about me. Maria almost never left my side, patting my arm every time someone said nice words about me. We're so proud of you, mijo. The rest of the week went by in the same vein. Rothschild's influence was felt almost everywhere we went. I'll be honest, I chose the limo, resort, restaurants, and shows for Santos's trip based on the business contacts I'd made over the years. I did a few favors, nothing major really, but Rothschild put his best foot forward. Everywhere we went, we were treated like VIPs. We were greeted by owners, not managers, directors, not assistants. They would tell Santos stories about how I helped them in their business and treat us to the best seats in the room, the best wine from the reserve, or the best of what they had to offer. It was really something. Mr. and Mrs. Santos, I must admit that this week has been too eventful. I know and have worked with all of these people, but I have never been given this level of service before. I'm afraid I'm living a much more meager daily life. Gavin, we think it's wonderful that you have so many friends who want to show us how special they think you are. We always knew you were a special young man, and we've always been proud to call you that. Maria Santos didn't have time to finish, but Miguel effortlessly entered the conversation. Our son. You are who you are and who you will always be. You took an oath before God that made you a part of our family. You have fulfilled every point of that vow. You have been a constant presence in our lives since you were a baby, and we have had the honor of watching you grow into a fine man. A father can't ask for more than that. Gavin, we love you and are very proud of you. Miguel Santos had aged a dozen years, but his strength hadn't diminished in the slightest. I thought he was going to break a few ribs as he hugged me. Moments later, Maria Santos joined our tearful embrace, giving me my first real family moment in so long. It filled my spirit with joy. The rest of their trip went by quickly, and I was sad to see them off. I promised to visit them soon, but first I had some business to attend to. Once again, Rothschild knew exactly what I needed. I returned to work encouraged and more productive. When I told him about my idea, he just smiled and gave me his blessing. The project was relatively small in scope and would not generate long-term income, but it was probably the most important project I had ever taken on. It only took 6 weeks to complete all but one of the necessary title documents. I already had a buyer with a full financing package in my pocket. I made a few more phone calls, 7 to be exact, to people who weren't expecting my call. Then, armed with new information on how to close a deal with the remaining property owners, I was ready and booked a flight to my hometown. I was to visit for the first time in nearly a decade. I was at the airport waiting to board my flight when I first met Amy and Lydia. They were working at a coffee kiosk in one of the terminals. I felt awkward eavesdropping on their conversation, but they weren't trying to be quiet. Everyone in line for a latte knew what their problem was. It was actually quite simple. The appliances and plumbing in their apartment had broken. The landlord refused to fix the problem. In addition, he was told that if they canceled their lease, they would lose their security deposit, which meant they would have no money to get out of this horrible situation. As Amy handed me my coffee, I handed her a card with instructions written on the back. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. I think I can help if you'd like. This is my business card. Call the number on the business card and ask for Marcus. Tell him that Gavin, which is me, asked you to ask him to find Melvin. Melvin, it's very important. He'll need your information and your master's. He'll take it from there. If you need help finding a new place to live, tell Marcus. He'll help you find a good place in your price range. I've written everything on the back of the card. At that moment, the boarding for my flight was announced. This is my flight. I have to go. Don't worry about the cost. I'll take care of it. Just use the number. Marcus, Gavin, Melvin, okay, good luck. Why did I offer to help them? It's a simple question. I've seen a lot of assholes in my time in real estate. It was Rothschild who gave me a fundamental belief about working in this business. Gavin, real estate is not a zero-sum game. There should be no winners and losers. In the best deals, everyone wins. Our clients get a solid investment at the right price, tenants get a high-quality property, and everyone makes money. We don't engage in fraud. We're matchmakers, not pimps. So a few phone calls, a letter, and maybe 30 minutes of work, and one of our paralegals was cleaning up this asshole and getting 2 girls out of a bad situation. Every once in a while, we've done pro bono work. This case was no exception. Before turning off the phone, I sent Marcus a quick email so he wouldn't be surprised when he got a call, and also so he'd know how to pay for his time. The flight to Omaha was relatively short, and I quickly got my rental car and luggage. For a few minutes, I wheeled aimlessly around the city. Not much had changed. At least the main attractions were still the same, but there was something new. It seemed the same, but it didn't feel like home anymore. I drove through the Santos neighborhood. Every house but theirs was in disrepair. This neighborhood had never been the best, but it was clearly neglected now. I knew some things had changed, like the new condominium complex that was my final destination. Its design was unique to the area. Several levels of condos above retail space filled with restaurants, a movie theater, and stores, including a grocery store. Adjoining the house was a large park with several walking paths. Everything was perfect. The apartment I lived in was brand new, with 2 bedrooms, a large open living room, dining room, and kitchen, and a separate den. The large balcony overlooked the park and had a beautiful view of the skyline. The master bedroom and bathroom were spa-like, with a soaking tub and large tiled shower. The space was beautifully furnished, the fixtures were top of the line, and the appliances were top of the line. A few photos and personal touches, and you will feel very comfortable. I expected the Santos to meet me for dinner at one of the restaurants, and they were on time. They were dressed for a night on the town, and we had a great dinner laughing. We could only hope that the rest of the evening would go just as well. Miguel and Maria Santos were each 67 years old and had been married for 50 years. I know what you're thinking. I did the math too. They were clearly married at a different time. They were both young at heart and healthy, but the years of manual labor had taken their toll on Miguel. Maria worked as a low-level administrator to save for retirement. During one of our conversations in Las Vegas, I learned that although they were ready to retire, they didn't think they could afford it and worried about living out their golden years in a house surrounded by crime and abandoned houses. I hope to change all that. As Rothschild reminded me, this is what children do to their parents. I invited them back to the condo for a late-night party. As we stepped into the elevator, they looked at each other in surprise. I didn't even know this was a hotel, mijo. The rooms must be expensive. Yeah, we need to talk about that. When I opened the door to the apartment, they both started raving about the room. It was nice to see that they liked it. I asked their 7 children to describe the Santos' dream home. Most of their descriptions matched, but some details differed from others. I was sure I had covered them all. It was the champagne that caught their attention. Are we celebrating? Yes, I hope so. What's the occasion? I popped the cork. Your retirement and new home. I raised my glass and gestured around the room. My goodness, this is a gift. We can't accept it, it's too much. Miguel is right, mijo. We can't accept something like this. Oh, it's not a gift, but you will have more than enough to buy it. Please sit down and let's talk about it. They hesitated a bit, but overall things were going well. When we sign these documents, we will create a partnership, the Santos Investment Group. The first thing we're going to do is close on 19 properties in a 2-block radius around your house. The second thing we will do is combine those properties with your current home. Request a zoning change from the planning department and sell them to Property Management International, which plans to use the space to build a hotel, stores, and parking lot next to the new arena. We'll realize that amount of money from the sale of our property in the next 90 days. I held out a piece of paper across the table with the dollar amount highlighted. I think they were shocked. This apartment is rented as is for the next 3 months with a 90-day option to buy for this amount. I held out a second piece of paper with another dollar amount highlighted on it. Then, half of the remaining profits will go to fund a lifetime annuity for the 2 of you with monthly dividends equal to this amount. A third piece of paper was placed on the table, and then you will begin living carefree on a well-deserved retirement in your new home. I'll just give you some sound business advice and free legal services. The Santos won't become rich, but they won't have to work a day in their lives. It was more of a silver parachute, and that would be enough. Gavin, how did you manage to do all this in such a short time? Well, buying the lot adjacent to yours took a little work, but was easy enough. Mr. Rothschild found a buyer through his business connections. It turned out that there was a new gambling establishment being built across the river in Iowa. We easily agreed on a price once we determined the value of the property given its new purpose. The zoning change would happen through our buyer's connections on the city council, and the rest was just a good investment. Maria Santos cried, but smiled. Miguel only shook his head. I can't believe it. It's just a miracle. It's more than we could have imagined. No one deserves it more than you two. I hadn't seen or heard of Anne-Marie in 10 years. Her parents never mentioned her name. Her siblings, though I interacted with them infrequently, never mentioned her name. I never thought of her. And yet, when I saw her for the first time, I felt like someone had shaken me from my sleep. I had loved her all through my formative years and the beginning of my adult life, and now I felt nothing. Our meeting was as random can be at all. I hadn't been packing well, choosing my favorite things over coordinated outfits. I needed to buy a few things to stay dressed throughout the trip. Luckily, the new mall had one of my favorite stores. When I left town, it wasn't there yet. I had been walking around the store for a while when I heard a familiar voice. You have great taste. Anne-Marie looked almost exactly as I remembered her. A little older, a smile not as bright, and a couple extra pounds. Nothing special, just a more mature version of the woman I'd married. Hi, Anne-Marie. Why are you here? I'm out shopping. What about you? Oh, I work here. I meant, why are you in town? Just finishing up some business and visiting old friends. Uh, I was going to get on your list of friends you're going to visit? Honestly, no. Oh, good. It was good to see you, Gavin. You too, Anne-Marie. I thought that was the end of it. It was very awkward, but not to the point of goosebumps. I figured it went better than I could have expected, since I wasn't planning on seeing her again. My peace of mind was short-lived when I noticed her working the cash register. She finished selling before she spoke again. Gavin, how long will you be in town? Maybe a few days. Do you think we could get together and talk at least a little? I'll think about it. She handed me her card. I walked away without another word. I really didn't have anything to say to her. I had really gotten over myself. I hardly called at all. Against my better judgment, 2 nights later I found myself sitting alone in a booth at one of my favorite bars. Anne-Marie and I often met friends here on Friday afternoons after work. The place was cozy enough, but not like it used to be. She was clearly all outfitted. A little black dress skimmed her curves, which had widened noticeably with age. Black shoes with 4-inch heels showed off her legs. She had clearly spent time on makeup, hair, and manicures. If she had been a stranger, I would have even asked if I could buy her a drink. She actually looked good. I didn't stand when she slid into the booth across from me. She waited a few minutes before she started. You lied to me. You lied to me first. I knew what she was talking about. She knew what I meant. She had the courtesy to make an embarrassed look before she continued. I didn't think you'd actually leave town. I was hoping we'd have a chance to talk. What would have been the point of that? I don't know. I really don't. But I do know I wasn't happy when you left me. Well, you left me no choice, so I don't feel guilty about your unhappiness. She was slightly surprised at my tone. I wasn't being harsh, I was just being truthful. Gavin, I never stopped loving you, even when I did what I did. I had to sigh. I wondered if she would decide to go down that path. Anne-Marie, the only good thing about our divorce was that you never lied to me. Probably because I never gave you a chance. But I'm not going to sit here much longer if you're going to lie to me now. What do you even want? Why are we sitting here? It's not going to change anything. What happened to us is long behind us. But you never fought for me. You just gave up on us without even arguing. It was so unexpected. Why did you leave me without even trying? I thought you loved me. Well, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree. The way it looked to me, you left me. Without a single word. You left me without giving me a single chance to fix what you thought was broken. I just put it on paper. That was a mistake, Gavin. I made a huge mistake, and I'm sorry, okay? I had to groan. The years spent apart had brought me clarity. Apparently, those same years had driven Anne-Marie into a state of delirium. Bullshit? A pained expression appeared on her face and her eyes began to water, but everything she said was a lie. Just because things didn't work out the way you hoped and you're feeling remorseful doesn't mean you can rewrite history. Please don't insult my intelligence by pretending you care about me. I do care, Gavin. I loved you. I still love you. You honestly believe that? Do you? It's true, Gavin. Okay, let's consider this theory. Was it you or Michael James who decided that I should be deprived of sex with my loving wife? She looked me straight in the eye, and for a second there was a flicker of shame in her gaze. But mostly it looked like she didn't want to answer and probably regretted starting it. It was him. So your endless love for me not only allowed you to spread your legs for another man, but to submit to his wishes, even if it would obviously hurt me? Gavin, Snap it! How long did you wait before you stopped taking birth control pills? What? Well, I mean, you didn't accidentally get pregnant. You decided to let him knock you up. That's what you wanted to do. When were you going to tell me you were carrying the baby you promised me in your womb? Or were you going to tell me you were carrying my child knowing we had nothing? She didn't even bother to open her mouth to try to answer. Why aren't you with him? Where is he anyway? He didn't want me. His wife found out about the baby and so did his boss at the office. His wife divorced him and he had to step down or he'd be fired. He left me. I had to quit my job too. It was too embarrassing to be there when everyone knew what had happened. And I'm supposed to feel bad about that? Why? I don't know, Gavin. I really don't. I made a mistake. I got involved in a bad thing and I couldn't stop. I know I was wrong. Can't you forgive me? I love you. I died the day you left me, and I've missed you ever since. I wanted you to come back and give me another chance. I wanted you to give me a chance to apologize and tell me I'd never do it again. I'm all alone, Gavin. My parents barely talk to me. My siblings don't want me around. I don't have any friends. I'm all alone. Anne-Marie, I forgave you a long time ago, but I have no way to go back to what we had. As for the rest, you have your bastard. He can keep you warm at night. That's cruel, Gavin. It's no more cruel than the lies you tell me. I'm not lying, Gavin. I want another chance. It's what I've dreamed of all these years. It's never going to happen. Why, Gavin? I know you love me. You said so yourself. You said you would always love me. I've always loved you. Why doesn't that work? For two reasons. One, I'm no longer the same person who married you. I've changed a lot. You don't know me anymore, and I certainly don't know you, if I ever did. You do know me, Gavin. I'm still the same as I was then, the woman you loved. So your first reason doesn't matter. What's your second? You know, Anne-Marie, that's the first thing you said, and I truly believe it. But let me tell you the second reason, and then I'll ask you a question. You wanted someone else. I let you get what you wanted without saying a single harsh word, because I loved you. Maybe I love you differently now. Since the day I left you, I've gone to law school, passed the bar exam, started a new career, and built a new life. But the one thing I haven't done is have another lover. I haven't had an affair with a woman since the last time we made love. Let me ask you this. How many different men have you tried in the time you've been pining for me and our lost love? Anne-Marie couldn't even lift her eyes to meet mine. No. You see, I knew you were telling me the truth, Anne-Marie. You see, I didn't know it then, but the woman I loved was a lying, deceitful whore. How could I ever trust you again? Why would I ever want to? Give me one reason why I would want to let you back into my life that wouldn't benefit only you. If you can do that, maybe we have a chance. She cried quietly as I got up to leave. That's what I thought. Goodbye, Anne-Marie. 3 months later, I saw them again. I was on my way back to Omaha to finish some business. Everything was going according to plan. Miguel and Marie were enjoying their new home and freedom. It warmed my heart to see and talk to them when they were so happy. The ladies didn't complain this time, just giggled and smiled as they served the customers. I was already immersed in my phone when I heard them call out my name. Mr. O'Connor. Yes, can I help you? For a second, I didn't recognize them. I mean, I'd never met them. I didn't even know their names. I was at a complete loss when it came to me. Oh yeah, Melvin. I'm sorry I couldn't find you. I should have followed up. How did it go? Fine, Mr. O'Connor. We would have contacted you, but we don't even know how to thank you. You're welcome. It's Gavin, and you're welcome. I was just trying to get some good karma. I'm just happy it worked out for you. I paused to assess the two young ladies. Only one was speaking. She was a very pretty brunette with a pleasant smile and curly hair falling to her shoulders. She was about 5 feet 7 inches tall and had a very slim but healthy figure. Her companion looked shy. She was a little taller and much slimmer. She had long, straight blonde hair. She didn't look unhealthy by any means. It was just that her figure was small, and everything about her matched that. I would have thought she was afraid of me if she didn't have a small smile on her face. The boarding for my plane was announced again. Ladies, this is my plane again. It was nice to see you again. Sorry, I don't know your names. I'm Amy, and this is Lydia. We're cousins. Well, Amy and Lydia, it was nice to see you again. I stood in line and was about to give my ticket to the agent when Amy ran up to me. She handed me a napkin from their coffee shop with her phone number on it. We really need to thank you properly. Will you call me when you get back? Since I was next in line to board, I just opened my mouth. Knowing myself, I probably would have gracefully declined if I had been given time to think. Sure, no problem. On the big holidays, it was always a family gathering. Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, 4th of July, and Cinco de Mayo were all occasions to gather and celebrate. Asking everyone to get together in September was a little weird. But that's exactly what I did. I was surprised that everyone fit in the Santos-sized new apartment. There was clearly not enough room to sleep, but as a gathering place, it was quite comfortable. Everyone settled into their seats and stared at me. This was going to be one of the hardest things I'd ever done in my life. Maybe they wouldn't consider it my place. I have no idea. But it felt like the right decision, and as Rothschild always said, I was going with my gut. I wanted everyone here, so I only had to say it once, and I wanted you all to hear it at the same time. First, I want to say that being treated as a full member of this family has been one of my greatest joys. Miguel and Maria, your love and support gave me the strength to deal with some very unfavorable circumstances. I will always be grateful to you for that. But I also remember Anne-Marie being a part of this family. She was able to share both the joy of successes and the pain of failures with this family. She cheated on me, and because of that, I had to make some hard choices. But she didn't cheat on any of you. Just a few months ago, I talked to her for the first and only time in the last 10 years. It was one of the most painful conversations of my life. I had some harsh words for her and her attitude towards me. But while I was always angry at her for her behavior, it was what she told me about all of you that made me feel ashamed. So I say this with all due respect to each and every one of you. Mr. and Mrs. Santos, please forgive my language and my hasty departure, but this is what I have to say and do. You all need to stop being a bunch of little assholes and stop ostracizing your daughter and sister, and her daughter. And until she's back in this family where she was always supposed to be, I want nothing to do with you. Mr. and Mrs. Santos, I will not contact you, and you must not contact me until this horse shit is over. The shocked expressions on their faces didn't give me much pleasure, but with those words, I walked away from my foster family with no hope of seeing them again. Life over the next year was pretty hectic on both a professional and personal level. In the office, we worked at a pace that could have killed us if we continued to work too long. After almost 8 weeks of 14-hour days and deals one after another, Rothschild was fed up. One evening in the conference room, she made the following clear to us all. That's it, I'm done. I can barely stand the sight of each and every one of you. We're closed from now on. Everyone get out of here and don't come back for a week. I'll pay you for your time if I don't have to look at you. With that, he left the building. I spent the first day of mandatory exile cleaning my apartment. I had forgotten that I had furniture that was buried under piles of papers, clothes, and takeout containers. I separated the laundry into dry cleaning and washing, turning out my pockets along the way. That's when I found the napkin with the number on it. On the morning of the third day of my exile, with a clean apartment and an updated closet, the napkin adorned my dining room table like a centerpiece. I decided to make a phone call. I sounded like an idiot. Hello? Yes, can I, speak to Amy, please? This is her. Oh, hi, Amy, this is Gavin. O'Connor. I was the one at the airport, so you gave me your number at the airport. Oh, shoot. I mean, you might remember me from the airport. You gave me your number a few weeks ago and asked me to call you. I was sure the red blush on my face was clear as a bell on the other end of the phone line. Hi, Gavin. Of course I remember you. How could I forget? Well, I'm sure this is too short notice, and you both probably have plans, but I was hoping you and Lydia could join me for dinner. Well, I guess I was hoping I could make you both dinner at my apartment and you could tell me how things are going with your apartment. Well, tonight, I guess. We've been kicked out of the office for a week and I've been bored. And while I'm sure I should have dotted some of the sentences, I was hoping you could have dinner tonight. With me. In my apartment. She giggled. I frowned. Gavin, we'd love to have dinner at your apartment and this evening works for us. Fantastic. Great, that's good. Gavin. Yes. Can you give me your address? Oh yeah, sure. My humiliation was total. I couldn't even invite a couple people over for dinner. I was much happier talking to Amy and Lydia face to face, although Lydia was still silent. She looked me in the eye and smiled, and that was more than enough for me. This is a great apartment, Gavin. You must love throwing parties here. My apartment was pretty impressive, not that I had much to do with it. It was the centerpiece of the unfinished lot. Rothschild and I were in the process of restructuring the developer's financing. It just so happened that the three-bedroom penthouse was for sale at below market value, and I jumped at the opportunity. I had a fantastic view of the strip and a prime bachelor pad that was hardly ever used for its intended purpose. I liked the place so much that I decided to spend a little more, but I didn't mention that I owned the building. Actually, unless you count my boss, you're the first visitors I've had here. Really? What about your girlfriend? Oh, I don't have a girlfriend. I haven't even been on a date since I got divorced, which was 10 years ago. Amy and Lydia sat on bar stools at the kitchen island and drank wine. Amy asked me question after question. It was really nice to talk to someone other than my boss and coworkers. I cooked pasta, worked on the sauce, and chatted nonstop. I didn't even notice that I was answering all of her questions. I guess I was just comfortable talking to them. I couldn't explain it. But then the conversation stopped. When I turned around, they were both looking at me with their mouths open. What, did I say something that upset you? I'm sorry, what did I say? You haven't been on a date in 10 years, Gavin? Well, no, I haven't. I've been studying and working, and things just haven't occurred to me. Is that weird? Yes. Even Lydia nodded her head. Well, I guess I never really thought about it. I guess it's weird. Jesus, Gavin, I just can't believe it. Well, it's true. Dinner's ready. Time to get to the table. Dinner was a lot of fun. There was a lot of laughter and smiles. I learned all about Amy and Lydia. Amy was in her last year of university majoring in hotel management, and Lydia was studying English with a degree in creative writing. I asked Lydia if I could read some of her work. Amy replied that she probably wouldn't say no. They exchanged glances that I couldn't read. They were both 22 years old and had been living together since they were 18 when Lydia's parents were killed in a car accident. Continuing to live together through college seemed ideal. Amy said that Lydia liked me and that she would eventually talk to me once she got to know me better. I left it at that. However, all night long the room felt strangely electric. Perhaps it was the wine or my complete lack of social skills, but I felt like they were both flirting with me. A couple times, I secretly chided myself for even thinking that way about the two young women who were my guests, but not too much. Frankly, I was pleased to have such attention, even if it was just a fantasy made up in my head. At the end of the evening, I was briefly hugged and kissed on the cheek by both girls. They left and Amy said we should meet again soon. I jokingly told them I was free for the rest of the week and to let them come over whenever they wanted. I was genuinely surprised when they showed up the next day before lunch with a picnic basket full of food. We ate lunch on the balcony and enjoyed the day until the temperature became unbearable to be outside. Then they both left for work. It seems they really took my invitation to heart. The next evening, after class ended, they returned with pizza, popcorn, and a movie. They sat down on the couch and I settled into my favorite club chair. The next day, Amy was a little nervous about asking permission to use the pool. She wondered if the building management had a policy for guests to use the pool. I smiled and said I would take care of it. When they arrived the next day, I had a surprise for them. I had keys to the pool and gym for both of them, as well as the locker in the women's living room. Sometimes it's good to be king. They had a surprise for me, too. When they came out of the bedroom in their bikinis, I realized I was going to have to increase the intensity of my daily workouts. For a few moments, I was sure I was going to have a heart attack when they left for the pool. After my week of exile was over, we got into a regular rhythm. I would leave for work and come home. 3 or 4 days a week, the girls would stop by my house to have dinner, go to a movie, or just chat. On Saturday or Sunday, we usually found some activity for the three of us to do. The girls also hit the gym almost daily, even though I was usually at work. Rothschild was over the moon whenever he had new material to tease me with. If I didn't know your sorry ass so well, I'd think you were dating 2 women at the same time. Give me a break, dude. We're just friends. And for heaven's sake, keep your lewd fantasies to yourself. About 4 months into our friendship, I realized something was wrong. One Friday night, we were having a quiet dinner at my house, but the girls were unusually restrained. As dinner drew to a close, I just couldn't stand the tension building. Girls, is something wrong? No, not really, Gavin. Lydia just wanted to ask you a question, but I don't know how to phrase it. Amy, you know you can ask me anything. I have no filter when it comes to the two of you. Just ask if you promise not to be offended by my answer. Well, okay. Why haven't you made a single step in our direction so far? Don't you find us attractive? I was a little stunned by the question. It took me a moment to pull myself together. Well, that's a difficult question. Let me just say that you are both stunningly beautiful young women, but I've never made a move on you for two reasons. One, I don't want to ruin our friendship by offending you or making you think I'm some dirty old man hanging around a couple of hot college girls to distract myself. And secondly, I don't even know if I have a move. I've never had the opportunity to use it. I don't even know where to start. Amy and Lydia stared at each other for a moment. Then Lydia smiled and nodded. Amy took a deep breath and sighed slowly. Gavin, Lydia and I want you to know that we really enjoy spending time with you, and we both really like you a lot. I like spending time together too. But Lydia and I are also looking for someone special, and we want you to know exactly what that means. Ladies, I meant what I said. You are both extremely attractive, and I can say with complete confidence that neither of you will have a problem finding someone special. I think each of you will find such a person without a problem. For a brief moment, I thought Lydia was about to speak. She was almost begging Amy to continue. We don't want each of us to have our own special person. We want one special person, just one. And we think that person might be, no, better said, we think that person is you. To say I was shocked is an understatement. I didn't even have time to finish before she continued. But we want you to understand exactly what we're asking before we take the next step. So, Lydia wants me to ask you to devote an evening to reading some of her work. She feels, and I agree, that this will give you some insight into what she is looking for. Then we'd like to come back tomorrow and talk about what that means for us. And to you. Well, and for all of us, can you do that? I think I can, though I admit I'm a little confused. You just want me to read her stories? Yes, Gavin, and tomorrow we'd like to talk about them and us. Okay, I can do that. Now I realize that some of you may have the wrong impression of me. I have strong opinions about what I think is right and wrong. This is true. These beliefs have always guided my actions. I also hold opinions about how I should treat people close to me, especially friends and family. In addition, I try to show kindness to strangers and people I don't know very well but have to interact with on a daily basis. However, I am not so narcissistic that I think all people share my opinion, so I adhere to the live and let live philosophy. As long as someone isn't hurting others, I have no opinion on how they live. Want to have 19 kids, a wife, and 4 dogs? That's fine with me. Just treat them well. However, I can also be a real hard ass. Those who crossed paths with me in business deals regretted it. Rothschild called it my Jekyll and Hyde quality. He said I always gave people a head start, treating them with excessive respect. But when someone crossed my path, I would, in his opinion, sometimes cut their heart out with a spoon just to watch them die. He thought it was funny. I thought it was a big exaggeration. But I did have a temper. I don't think I was like that before Anne-Marie broke my heart. Until that moment, I had never experienced someone betraying my trust in such a dramatic way. This incident has made me very loyal to those who have earned my trust and extremely vindictive to those who abuse it. For a long time after the divorce, I had almost no libido. I was too consumed with the pain of the divorce to even think about it. Anything that reminded me even slightly of Anne-Marie made me breathe hard. I coped by ignoring those thoughts and concentrating on my studies or work. It took a long time for that pain to dissipate. I always thought that meeting the love of my life at such a young age was great, but it turns out I missed out on a big chunk of life experience that could have come in handy in my situation. I had never asked a girl out on a date. I had never been in a one-night relationship. I had no idea how to attract a girl's interest, let alone a woman's. Unfortunately, because of this, I was too afraid of rejection to even try. I was confident in many things, but thanks to Anne-Marie, satisfying a woman was beyond me. Before I knew it, 10 years had passed and I was beginning to think that I would never get the chance to try anything new. It was with these thoughts in mind that I read Lydia's stories. They were stunningly vivid, written historical tapestries that really showcased her creativity. She wrote like poetry and outlined her characters so clearly that I felt like I had known some of them all my life. From her stories, I learned a lot about Lydia. When the girls arrived around noon the next day, I was terrified that I was about to ruin a couple of wonderful new friendships. After grabbing drinks and appetizers, we headed into the living room. Amy got straight to the point. Lydia and I are not sexually involved with each other. Okay, that's probably important to know, but I honestly hadn't thought about it. Lydia only smiled as Amy continued. Lydia and I always looked out for each other. We weren't just cousins. We've been best friends for as long as I can remember. When we started getting interested in boys, we always talked about what we liked, what we did with our boys, and more importantly, what we wanted to do with our boys. I was always drawn to sweet, caring boys. Lydia, on the other hand, was always drawn to the more aggressive alpha males. The guys she dated were great in the bedroom, but acted like a piece of shit on dates. I guess even though I understood what she needed, and even understood the appeal of what she was attracted to, I just didn't want her to get hurt. They sat next to each other, holding hands. Then our worst fears came true. One of Lydia's boyfriends became overly aggressive. A few weeks later, Lydia found out she was pregnant. It didn't go well and she started having problems. To make a long story short, the pregnancy had to be terminated for the sake of her health. But complications arose. Because of that, Lydia can't have children. Unshed tears stood in the eyes of both of them. We dreamed of our children playing together since we were young. We were only 19 years old each, and that dream ended before it could begin. But I love Lydia more than a cousin and more than a friend. I knew she would always have a place in my life. We talked, and together we decided that our dream should not end. I would love Lydia's children as if they were my own, and I knew she would love mine as if they came from her womb. So we agreed that we would share my children and raise them together as co-mothers. They both looked at me, apparently to gauge my reaction. I didn't know what to respond. I felt like Amy was describing one of the most selfless acts of kindness I had ever heard. I had always known there was an unspoken intimacy between them, and now that I knew the story, it all made sense. I think it's one of the saddest, kindest, and most beautiful stories I've ever heard. They both smiled softly. But then we had another problem. Before we could approach anyone with our idea, we had to find a suitable candidate, and after a while, we were sure we'd have to say no. The guys who attracted me were too weak for Lydia. The guys who attracted Lydia's attention were always too arrogant for me. So we searched for the impossible, a handsome, kind and gentle, loving, mega-confident alpha male. And then we met you, Lydia whispered. It was the first time Lydia had ever spoken to me. It made my heart race. Amy continued. Without even knowing us, you solved our problem without even asking for a thank you. It was one of the nicest things anyone has ever done for us. And at the same time, you just took charge. You identified our problem, gave us a solution, told us what to do, and then left without saying a word. It was so perfect that we didn't even know how to approach you so as not to ruin the relationship. And then we met up again and started communicating with you. We got to know the real you, not just the one we had fantasized for ourselves, and it was wonderful. And then we decided to take a chance and let you into our world without any secrets. That way, if you thought we were crazy, we'd have a chance to stay friends when you turned us down. Now I really didn't know what to say. I was sure I had just been offered a life with two hotties, but there was no way that was going to satisfy me. Okay, this is too much for me. I need time to think things through. Why don't we take a break? I promise we'll talk more this weekend. Of course, Gavin. We understand, Amy replied. They left quickly. I was feeling a little disappointed. I already knew what my answer would be, but I wanted to give them an answer that would match their offer. They had given it a lot of thought and were clearly sharing something very personal with me. I wanted my answer to match that. I quickly ran a few errands to get ready for the evening and got back to the apartment around 3 o'clock. I pulled out my cell phone and home phone and sat down at the kitchen table. I prepared a text message for Lydia and then called Amy. Hello? Hi, Amy, it's Gavin. I hit the send message button. Hi, Gavin. Amy, I was wondering if you wanted to go out with me tonight. Maybe have dinner and a drink or two? In the background, Lydia's cell phone rang. A few seconds later, I heard her sigh in surprise. Gavin, I'd love to have dinner with you tonight. Great. I'll pick you up at 7 o'clock if that's okay. Sounds great. Great. I'll see you soon. I hung up and waited for Lydia's response. Her invitation was much riskier, but I hoped my hunch would come true. My message read, "Be at my place at 6:15. Don't be late. You're staying the night." I replied honestly. Perfect. I took the flowers to the door of Amy's apartment. When she opened the door, I was at a loss for words. I know every girl has a little black dress, maybe even a few. Anne-Marie always wore it for special occasions. I can tell you that I've never seen a dress as perfect as the one Amy was wearing. I handed her the flowers, a small bouquet of white lilies. Wow, you look amazing. Thank you, Gavin, for the flowers and the compliment. My evening with Amy could be described as romantic. We shared a bottle of wine and sushi at one of her favorite restaurants. Then we drove to one of my favorite nightclubs for drinks. The tall, round booths provided the perfect privacy for conversation. And we got to talking. We talked about our dreams and future plans. We talked about what we thought about children and family. We talked about partners and commitments. We bonded. I could feel it. By the end of the evening, her eyes were glowing. In the early evening, we strolled through a local park holding hands. For a few minutes, we just walked and enjoyed each other. As we stood at the door of her apartment, I couldn't help but show the worry on my face. What's bothering you, Gavin? Why me, Amy? I'm 10 years older than you. I'm divorced. All the male eyes and most of the female eyes we passed by this evening were practically fixed on you. You can get anyone you want. Gavin, at some point, very soon, I'm sure you'll realize this, but tonight, can you live with me just telling you that you're the one? I know that. There is no other. Yes, I can live with that. Thank you for a wonderful evening, Amy. No, Gavin, thank you. I wasn't a big believer in organized religion, but I'd always appreciated the pageantry and community of large holiday church services. I had to convert to Catholicism to get married at Anne-Marie's church, and I had been a faithful parishioner during our marriage, so it was strange to be sitting in my former church on Easter Sunday. I was a little confused about the start time of Mass and had already been sitting alone in the back of the church for about 15 minutes when she sat down next to me. This seems an appropriate place for confession. Forgive me, Gavin, for I have sinned. Anne-Marie, I forgave you a long time ago. You know that. Oh, I suppose I know that, Gavin. But you forgave me when I did not deserve it, and at a time when I was unrepentant for what I had done. But now, Gavin, I finally realize the pain I've caused you. If I could, I would give anything not to betray you. Honestly, I always thought you deserved someone better than me. I'm so sorry I couldn't be the woman you deserved. And I want to thank you for giving me my family back. My dad told me that you're the reason they came to me. You always were and still are such a good man, Gavin. Thank you, Anne-Marie. I appreciate your apology, and you are always welcome. Mass went well. Easter brunch was plentiful, but as the day passed, I realized that when Anne-Marie and her daughter returned to their seats, there was no room for me in the Santos family. It was time to move on. There were a few tearful goodbyes when it was time for me to leave. I think we all knew what my goodbyes really meant. In a moment that made my journey come full circle, Maria Santos hugged me at the door, letting me know she understood more than she was saying. When she finally let me go, she put her hand on my cheek, closed her eyes, and was silent for a moment. When she opened them again, she spoke in a voice that only I could hear. God bless you, mijo. I will miss you. My personal life was not normal. For months, Amy, Lydia, and I had been following a strange pattern. We spent a tremendous amount of time together as a platonic trinity. If Amy and Lydia lived with me full-time, the difference in our weekly time together would probably not exceed a couple hours. I was insanely happy dating Amy. There was nothing but kissing between us. She was just saying that we would both understand when the time was right. And I couldn't disagree with her. I just didn't feel like we were ready to take the next step. But what was most abnormal was that she didn't mind at all making me tense up and then sending me back to Lydia for relief. Of course, I didn't particularly resist. Lydia, for her part, brightened up. Amy told me that from the very first time we met, Lydia had told her that I was perfect. Apparently, I could read between the lines. Lydia was a submissive in every sense of the word. She needed to be guided. It made her feel safe and cared for. Amy managed their day-to-day affairs for many years, and gradually that role passed to me. Obviously, the deciding factor was the flowers. I hadn't really thought about giving my girls flowers. It just seemed like an appropriate gesture at the time. I gave Amy flowers at the beginning of our first date and other random moments because it was romantic. Lydia's flowers were more of a thank you and had to be delivered at another time due to certain circumstances. My first real date with Amy went great, but as I walked back to my apartment to Lydia waiting for me, I started to worry that I wouldn't be able to give her what she needed. I shouldn't have worried. Over the next few months, I spent hours contemplating the best way to win Lydia over. But that first night, it was instinct that decided everything. When Lydia walked into the room with the biggest smile I'd ever seen on her face, holding her flowers, I was finally able to take my first full breath of the day. Mission accomplished. Leaving Omaha for the last time, I enjoyed myself immensely. I told myself over and over again that I had survived Anne-Marie's betrayal of our marriage. I told myself that I had a new life. I had a new life and a new career. I had money, and I convinced myself that it was enough. But that's exactly what was missing. Real completion and a real sense of peace. I knew what I needed right now. Happiness. On the way home, I made one stop, went into one store and made two purchases. It didn't take much time. Having money has its advantages. My girls were happy to see me, and as has become customary, we all sat down to dinner. Our conversation was light and fun. We were doing well, we had a pretty good life. I hoped to make it even better. Amy and Lydia cleared the table and went into the kitchen to clean up and load the dishwasher. I stood behind them for a long time just watching them work. Together, cheerfully enjoying the tedious task because they were together. I know why we still haven't had sex. Lydia turned to look at me, but Amy didn't budge, preferring to stay with her eyes glued to the sink. When you and I make love for the first time, it will be because the most important purpose a couple can have is to create life, to give a piece of each of us for one beautiful and common purpose. That is why we will be together. But you will have an even more important purpose. You will share your beautiful gift to give Lydia and me what we cannot get on our own. Only you can give Lydia and me what we lack. You will give us the most important thing a person can give, a child. Lydia smiled, but tears were running down her cheeks. I think you waited patiently for me to have an epiphany. And I think you waited long enough. I knelt down and pulled a box out of my pocket. When I opened it, Lydia started jumping up and down, clapping her hands softly. Amy slowly turned to face me with unshed tears in her eyes. Amy, will you marry me? Yes, Gavin, I will marry you and love you forever, giving everything I have. In complete agreement, Amy and Lydia hugged first. It was a perfect example of how close they were and how we all needed each other, each with our own unique set of gifts that, when put together, complemented our lives beautifully. I put the ring on Amy's finger and Lydia said approvingly, What a beautiful ring, Gavin. Oh, I won't leave you out, dear. You're going to be a constant and prominent part of our lives, and I don't want you to think for 1 second that I've forgotten that. I pulled a second box from my pocket and opened it so my girls could see an ankle bracelet with a diamond in the center of a Celtic knot. The three corners of the knot were set with birthdate stones: ruby, sapphire, and amethyst. Lydia, we love you and need you. Please don't ever leave us. Amy was actually crying, but Lydia was surprisingly calm as I slipped the bracelet around her ankle. I'm home, Gavin. I'm not going anywhere. We were married 3 months later in a small ceremony. Lydia stood next to Amy, Rothschild next to me. 6 months later, Aidan James O'Connor joined us. Twins, Sophia Marie and Stephen Michael, were born a year and a half later. 11 months after that, baby Olivia Rose joined our family. Our boys were like me. Sophia, a tiny version of Amy, and Olivia, a clone of Lydia, with a symmetry that could only be divine. Their bond was instant and permanent. Did Amy and I envy the fact that Olivia treated Lydia like a single parent and Amy and I like an aunt and uncle she loved dearly? No, not for a second. Amy and I lived as husband and wife, but Lydia was never far away. I started my journey as a contented married man, but I lost all that. My journey to happiness took a long time, but I found my place again. Our life together was as perfect as any relationship can be. I loved Amy, Lydia, and our children. Amy loved me, Lydia, and our children. Lydia loved Amy, needed me, and treated our children with the love that only a mother can give. No one has ever told anyone about our lifestyle. Only our very close friends know the truth. And we live a very happy life. Together. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.